We're going to be going through quite a few different examples of crowdfunding projects, how you can use crowdfunding for your charity. We're going to be going through how projects have done it, importantly, how they do it behind the scenes, because what you see a lot from the front is how people have raised lots of money from lots of people, but we really want to see behind the scenes what are charities and other projects doing to really engage with their crowd. So we've got a few slides to run through. We're going to be doing that, and Duncan's going to be looking at the questions that are coming in as we do that.
Fantastic. So if you've got any questions as we go through, just use the chat bot to the right of the screen, and I'll be looking at those and I'll feed them into Phil as we go through. So do ask anything, and we'll interrupt the presentation.
Great stuff. So first of all, really, we want to look at kind of what are the different types of crowdfunding that are out there. So you'll see it a lot in the press and a lot of stuff online about crowdfunding being used left, right, and centre, but it's actually used for a vast array of different things. First one to look at really is donation-based crowdfunding. You guys will be very familiar with this in the kind of Just Giving, GoFundMe type environment where people are just giving money towards projects. You've also got items like rewards-based crowdfunding, which is where Crowdfunder focuses a lot of its energy on, which is where people are actually getting something tangible back for the money they're putting into the project. We also work on a lot of community-owned businesses using community shares. So we've raised £15 million now for community businesses, which is a great tool for local communities to buy local assets. But crowdfunding does also get used for things like lending and equity crowdfunding as well. So a lot of people I'll talk to when I mention crowdfunding may immediately think equity, depending on their background. That's not really what we're going to be talking about today. You know, that's the domain of people like Crowdcube and Seeders, and Funding Circle doing the lending. The real area we focus on is the left-hand side, and because these are really the projects with purpose. These are the ones that are changing lives and making a real difference all over the world, and those are the ones that are of interest to us. So just a little bit on Crowdfunder from when we set it up. So we're now at almost £70 million raised. That's over 124,000 projects that have come into the site, and we get about 200 projects a day coming into the site from all over the country and beyond. And the largest raise to date is now 2.5 million. So we see projects at a very small level, 200, 300 pounds, right up to a kind of large level at 2.5 million. Very, very broad range of projects coming in. So yes, a lot in the charity sector, but a lot from kind of arts, heritage, community, businesses, university projects. We work with a number of universities, fair amount of kind of political fundraising. The overarching theme really for a site like Crowdfunder is about, is there a community that wants to see something happen? That's where we really focus our energy. And no matter what your idea, if your community want to see it happen, then we want to work with you and help you raise the funds to make that idea happen. So a little bit on kind of rewards-based crowdfunding. This is a great example of a project, Audio Active down in Brighton. One of their patrons, who's the Rag and Bone Man, musician, appeared in their video. They put this project together basically to create a new space within the space down in Brighton, and great example of rewards-based crowdfunding. So on the right-hand side, you can see the rewards, some of the rewards they offered. I picked out, they actually had about 20 on there. I picked out 4 that I really liked, which range from kind of, you get, for 25 quid, you get a t-shirt back. For 40 quid, you actually get a meal for 2 at a local restaurant. And this was a reward that was donated by the local restaurant. It's a great way of involving other local businesses in this. For 250 quid, you get a signed vinyl Rag and Bone Man Bluestown LP, which is really nice. But right up to those more kind of commercial rewards, for £1,000, you basically get to sponsor a rehearsal room. So it's again a great way of bringing businesses into this and getting businesses to sponsor it. So from this, you can see kind of crowdfunding starts to be a way of actually bringing together all those different audiences into the project.
No, it's such a great way to drive higher donation amounts. So we're seeing on Crowdfunder donation amounts of around the £50 mark. Other giving sites usually see somewhere between £15 and £20, and the incentivized giving aspect of this really resonates with a new audience. So I think it's as you can see, you're asking people how much are they prepared to part with, and you're giving them something in return.
Just showing a few other examples of how crowdfunding's been used for charities. So the Felix Project, who work with food reuse here in London, basically raised £162,000 from 466 supporters to launch their new space. It's part of a funding mix. They were getting funding from other places as well, but it was important to them that they had a crowd element and were able to show that there is public support and demand for their idea. You got charities like Veg Power from the Food Foundation. So these guys raised £100,000 to launch their national awareness campaign to get more kids eating vegetables. As a parent of young kids, I know how hard it is to get them to eat vegetables. And this is a great way of actually engaging people like myself who care about this topic and want our kids to eat healthily, and getting them to fund the change that they want to see happen in the world and really kind of tackle this problem head on. This is a project that's live quite now. It's always quite nice to see projects that are live now. This went live last week. They've already raised £28,000 from almost 600 supporters. If you look at I took this screenshot yesterday, so if you look at it live, it may have even hit target by now. And these guys are basically working with child refugees to reunite them with their families, and they want to launch an in-house legal team. I think this is a great example of a charity that's being launched to plug a gap which is very current, and launching a new service which people can really resonates with people, and people understand why it's needed. It's a very specific ask within the charity that they're raising for, and that really resonates well with the crowdfunding audience.
And very current as well. I think that's why those kind of projects really fly.
Yeah, it's very true. And over to these guys, Full Fact. So they raised £100,000 from 2,000 supporters over 48 days in the run-up to the last election. And again, this stemmed from the fact that a lot of people are looking at the news and looking at what the prospective politicians are saying, and not knowing whether they can trust it or not. So these guys are an independent charity that are basically fact-checking every single thing that's being said by politicians, but that costs time and money to do that, and they do a fantastic job of this. But they ramped up their efforts before the last election. They raised £100,000 to get more bodies on this so they could fact-check more things, and 2,000 people supported their activities. And they've launched, I think they launched about 5-6 years ago, and going great guns now, fact-checking everything that comes out.
And there's a number of examples of that. There's a live one at the minute led by Donkeys, which not only fact-checking but calling out some of the ironies and making fun of it through a poster campaign and other innovations.
Definitely, and they've now raised £430,000, I think, and they've just gone live again yesterday. This is another project I'm working with at the moment, which is a medical charity. So Cardiomyopathy UK are working with Imperial College to launch a new platform for people with cardiomyopathy, which is a heart disease. They went live last week. We're already at £25,000, and a really interesting one again, where we're working with teams that aren't necessarily used to crowdfunding, haven't used crowdfunding before, and working on a plan of how we launch this way ahead of time. That's something you'll see come through quite a lot in this discussion. Is there's a lot of planning that goes into this beforehand to make sure that we hit the ground running. A little bit on how social enterprises use crowdfunding. So social enterprises is perfectly suited to rewards-based crowdfunding because they very, very often have a tangible product or service. And we've seen more and more charities kind of getting involved in this about how they can launch social enterprises to have an impact locally, but also to raise funds. So two great examples here. Luminary Bakery are now in Stoke Newington, crowdfunded £16,000 for their new premises in Stoke Newington. If you haven't been there, go there. It's fantastic. They've got lots of beautiful cakes and pastries that they make, which are very nice. And Change Please, who you will have most likely seen because they're absolutely everywhere. They're now going into, they're basically training homeless people to be coffee baristas, and they're now over a lot of the London tube sites as well. So they're starting to go into those premises and set up coffee shops there. They're doing some fantastic work.
And just to put it on your radar for a little bit later in Phil's presentation, you can see the logo Santander on the Change Please. This is where match funding comes into crowdfunding. So I'm not going to say anything about it. I just want to put that on your radar, ready for when Phil talks about it a bit later.
That's a good point. So those are a lot of individual cases of how people are using crowdfunding, but actually there's a lot of charities out there that are using it multiple times now. So this is a great one. Lem Cisse, the poet, lovely man. He basically he's a care leaver himself, and every Christmas he puts on Christmas dinner for care leavers. I think it started back in 2014, the Hackney Christmas dinner. It's now spun out to lots of different locations. So not only is he doing it in one location, he's got teams that are independently springing up and setting them up, and he's done it in a way that it can be decentralized. They can crowdfund their own Christmas dinner for care leavers locally, and then doing it right across the country. So every Christmas we tend to get about 10 projects like this popping up that are crowdfunded independently for a very specific thing, for a specific event that's going to happen at a specific time with a very exact target audience.
Yeah, and just in terms of those of you watching at the minute, and then those who have booked to watch the recording of this, you come from quite a diverse fundraising background. Some are individual fundraisers, some are corporate, some will be trusts and foundations. There's a number of different people watching. What I love about this slide is it looks like an annual appeal. So each year there's a decent chunk of money raised, but actually this works in different ways. So you can see that some of these are done for London, some are for further north in Ellesmere Port in Liverpool, there's one in Oxford, there's a Birmingham one. So the crowd in each of those cases is very different. So it's not necessarily true that the same people are supporting the same cause. It's a different crowd that is geographically based in this example.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's very similar kind of our next project as well. So Butterfly Conservation, an amazing charity doing some fantastic work, and they've been using Crowdfunder for about 4 years now. They've run 10 campaigns over that time, raising between kind of 8,000 and 12,000 each time. It's a total of £94,000 now raised from 3,400 supporters over those 10 projects. And crowdfunding has become a central part of their fundraising strategy. So they're planning to run 3 or 4 crowdfunds every year. They'll do one every quarter. And what they've got very good at is picking the topics, I suppose, from across their organization that work well with crowdfunding. So if you look across these, a lot of them tend to be local in nature, or they tend to actually have focus on a specific group like children and how you get children involved. So some of them are place-based, some of them are more kind of demographic-based, but they've done a great job of picking the topics that they think are going to crowdfund best out of what they're doing.
Yeah, we're actually we've got caterpillars in our house at the minute. My daughter, her rainbows are growing caterpillars, so we've got 5 that we're hoping to turn into chrysalis this weekend. So right on topic in our house.
Oh, fantastic. And again, this is a project they've got live now, so they've just launched their 10th project. That should put them over £100,000 in total, and you can go and see this live on the site as we speak. So it's all very nice seeing that from the front end and going, this is great. They've set up these projects, they've raised loads of money. So most people coming to crowdfunding basically believe it's, you have a really nice idea, let's crowdfund it, let's just stick this project live and it just magically gets funded. That is what a lot of people believe. Unfortunately, that's not true. I'd love that to be true, but in most cases, it actually involves a little bit more work. So we kind of break it down into kind of 3 sections on this, which is there needs to be a fair amount of planning. You know, what is your idea? Who will want to back it? And how do I reach them? There's also a fair amount of work that happens after that in terms of putting the actual project page together. You've got to put a killer project page together, make a video, start speaking to people and figure out who's doing what within the organization. And then when you launch the project, again, when you press go live, that's not the end of it. We need to push for an intensive period to ensure everyone actually sees this project and funds it.
What's the average length of crowdfunding, Phil? What do you advise?
In terms of, so there's kind of two parts of that, I suppose. In terms of preparation, kind of I'd say at least 2 to 4 weeks of preparation. It depends how big and active your crowd is already, and we can talk about that a bit later. And then when you're actually running your project, the sweet spot we say is 28 days. And what happens is any longer than 28 days, then you just start, it's really hard to keep the momentum up. And momentum is really important in a crowdfunding project. So we've got a graph later that shows that and kind of what happens, you know, big push at the beginning, big push at the end, but the middle bit can get a bit quiet sometimes. So sometimes by extending it to kind of 50 days, 60 days, you just extend that middle quiet bit. And some of the common mistakes that we see charities making, and this isn't exclusive to charities, we see a lot of organizations doing this. I think one of the things is not getting specific. So you'll notice in a lot of those crowdfunding projects, they're for a specific ask. You know, if you launch a general fundraiser for the work you do, it won't work as well. We've seen that time and time again. It works much better if it's something new, it's something quite timely, quite current, quite important to your organization, and preferably something that won't happen without the power of the crowd getting behind it. Those are the ones that kind of really transparently work with backers and supporters. The other thing I'd say is working in a silo. So we've seen this a number of times where one person within the organization is kind of championing it and running with this and will launch it, but but the rest of the team aren't really behind it. It's going to involve the whole fundraising team, but also, you know, everybody within the charity. For a smaller charity, when you're kind of, you know, anywhere from kind of 5 to 20 people, let's say, it should involve everybody in the charity as much as possible, you know, getting behind this and pushing this. And that's when I've seen it work to its best effect. That's what's happening. And in larger charities, really from right across the fundraising team spectrum. So everybody from the individual giving to the major gifts, celebrity team, etc., all getting together and working on this collaboratively.
I'd add into that as well: PR, marketing, communications, leadership, events. Everyone's got to be behind this, which is why one of the reasons the short timescale works, I suppose. So you can get everyone to say, actually, this is what we're doing this month. This is the sprint. But also so that the messages that are going out, you know, there's not an annual appeal over here or a campaign on advocacy over here. Actually, what we're talking about is this. This is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the other bit I'd say is launching on the quiet. I've seen this a number of times where it's like, well, we're going to try a little bit of crowdfunding just over here on this thing, but we're not going to talk about it too much in case it doesn't work. That will basically sign its death warrant. It will not work. So it needs to be front and center, not a little test on the side. Otherwise, there isn't really much point in doing it. So I do like that approach of saying, actually, the month of September is going to be our crowdfunding month. That's what we're focused on, and we're going to go full guns blazing on it.
But isn't the process of that useful anyway? Because then it helps you decide this is a priority. I don't mean the crowdfunding, but the thing you're crowdfunding for makes it important, and therefore the crowd knows it's important. Therefore, the crowd will give it money.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And not utilizing rewards-based crowdfunding as well. So you'll see some projects are pure donation, and there are people who can raise significant amounts with pure donation projects. But what the rewards do is, yes, they'll increase the amount that somebody gives. So the average amount we see people giving is £50 across the platform. But it will also give you something great to talk about over 28 days and give you something different to talk about. So quite often you'll see rewards introduced halfway through a project, and they go, actually, we've got 3 EPs here signed by Rag and Bone Man. Is anyone up for them? And it can just give new life to a project in the middle. So what we work on with a lot of projects is actually holding back some of those rewards that we had from an early stage and say, actually, we're going to release that on day 7. Because we know by day 7 it might be starting to taper off a little bit. Let's give it something that gives it a bit of an oomph.
But that's the thing that separates Crowdfunder from other sites, really, the rewards, isn't it? That you come and use crowdfunder.co.uk because it's a reward-based platform. It can do other things, but it enables you to tell an amazing story and then say, actually, we want to engage with you, Mr. Donor, Mrs. Donor. We'd like this to be a two-way process. We're not just asking you, we want you to be part of something. And
it's a great way of getting very creative about it and giving it a bit of spark and making it very different from a straight donation ask. I always split down when I'm talking to a project initially about how they approach crowdfunding. I always break it down into a battle of two halves. First half is how do we create a kick-ass page that does everything we want it to do, that tells the story, that engages people. But the other half of the battle, which is really important, is promoting your project. Creating your project in a way is a bit easier because you can look at we funded 26,000 projects on crowdfunding. You can look at each of them and you can get a good example of how it's done. You can often find examples. I'd advise you to also look at examples, ones that are similar to yours, and look at the bits you can take from that. The other important element is promoting your project. That's harder in a way because actually it's less visible sometimes how projects have done that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Cool. Just before you move on, we've got a really good question from Adria around rewards. What are the tax implications of giving rewards for a charity and for a kick? So I think Adria's going to be talking about gift aid and tax implications there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, gift aid, you can opt to receive gift aid basically on the donations and the rewards that you add on Crowdfunder. It will fit under your normal gift aid rules. So if there's a product which is valuable which is not gift aidable, then it would not be gift aidable. If that makes sense. So I think the thing there is just follow what you'd normally do internally on that. And for businesses running crowdfunding campaigns as well, then again, their normal tax implications of that is income into the business. So you'll have those normal tax implications of that. And if they're VAT registered, again, it has the normal implications of that if they're actually giving a tangible product or service back.
Cool. Adria, let us know if that answers your question or not, mate. Thank you.
So onto creating your project. I think this is the part which for charity fundraisers is actually quite straightforward, because a lot of those 28,000 people who have crowdfunded previously and raised £70 million have absolutely no fundraising background whatsoever. They're coming to this completely fresh. So a lot of times they have to think about, how do they construct their story? How do they construct that ask? We always break it down into kind of 3 key elements, which you must include in your project, which is, what do you want to achieve? Why is this important? And how will you use the funds raised? It's amazing how many times I see a project, they'll actually miss one of those key elements. Right. So they'll say everything great about what they're doing, but they won't actually say what the money is going to be spent on or why they need any money. Or they'll just come in straight with a kind of, I need this money for this, but they won't talk about the benefits of why that's going to be used. Yeah. Essentially, if you've got those 3 items in there, plus some more, then you're going to be tackling all those questions that people have.
So for the professional fundraisers that are listening, this is bread and butter to them, and for the marketeers that are listening, this is bread and butter for them. Yeah. But for anyone that's doing this for the first time, that's you're often missing. Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose there's 2 ways that story comes across, which is, one is through the text, the other one is through the video. Yeah. We'll speak a little bit about the video later, but what I would say is, again, the video element is maybe new to some fundraisers. I from the stuff we've looked at, kind of half of users will read the text and half the users will watch the video. Yeah. Some might do both. I'm a video person. I'll watch the video. I'll watch the first 10 seconds of it. I'll decide pretty much then whether I'm going to back the project, and anything I'm looking at afterwards is just kind of backing up my decision, basically, to fund it. So,
but also, doesn't that, I think it makes it completely more shareable. I hardly ever share text. Yeah. But if there's a video that's worth watching, I'll share that, because it feels like someone's given thought, and it's more engaging, and particularly on a handheld device, way more engaging rather than reading something.
Definitely. And you need to look at ways you can grab the users, both in the text and the video. How can I grab those potential donors quite early on in the messaging, pulls them in and gets them hooked into this,
and turn a donor into an evangelist or an ambassador.
Yeah, because giving is great and sharing is even greater, because actually it can reach even more people. So we wanted to have a little bit look at rewards and how they can help motivate the crowd. A lot of people say to me, are people pledging on this project because they really like what we do, or are they pledging because actually they want a reward? The real sweet spot is actually straight down the middle. If you can find both users and also rewards that hit this sweet spot, is actually they really do believe in your idea and believe what they're doing, but in a way the reward allows them to give more, then that's fantastic. So we've seen that behavior a lot, where someone will come in and go, look, I'm going to back this project. Yeah, maybe it's in my kind of 10 quid, 20 quid part of my giving, because it's a donation. But for 50 quid, I get to go to this event and take my family to it and do this and do that. You'll see people move up that ladder and give more and justify it to themselves in a very, very different way. So it can move from my kind of charitable donation spending into my entertainment spending, into my, my personal consumer purchase spending. It suddenly starts to behave quite differently. I think for a lot of place-based charities, I think some of the best rewards are ones that invite people to come in and see more of what you do. So we've seen stuff with museums. I know we've got a few museums on the call today, and I think seeing that museums where it's like, actually, you can come for 100 quid. You can come on a behind-the-scenes tour. You can see how we're renovating these articles, what we're doing to these pictures, everything we've got up here that we can't put on display, all the people that work upstairs in the back room. And you get a bit of a glimpse behind it of how it all fits together. I love those ones, because they're a value to the donor, but they're also a value to the museum to be able to show off what they're doing. And I think historically a lot of those rewards have been the domain of big donors. So you'll have a kind of big philanthropist donor who goes, okay, we'll take them on the tour and we'll show them around. And something nice about crowdfunding, which actually levels the playing field, it says lots of people can get involved at this level.
Love that.
Let's do this to more people.
Back to Adria's question as well, on something like that. If you donated £50 to your favourite museum and in return got a night in the museum, for an example, as a reward, there's no perceived value to that in terms of, you can't buy it, it's priceless, it's nothing, so there's no tax implication. So
brilliant. All the more reason to do that.
Actually, I'm going to give one more example as well. I've just done a sponsored event, an endurance event, and I used the rewards model. And as part of the rewards model, I was selling my world famous sweet chili jam, which arguably has zero value, let me say. But it forced people like Phil to give me 50 quid. And I sold
I'm looking forward to my
scores,
£50 jam.
Well, scores and scores and scores of this jam went out the door. And genuinely, I think it made people that would normally give £20 for doing a challenge event do £50.
Yeah.
Not because my jam's any good. It is. You're going to love it. But the value of that is negligible. And you've donated £50 to the charities that I was supporting. So
yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to that jam. So the rewards.
Darren says the jam is amazing. He has had some of the jam actually. That's true. Thanks, Darren.
So the rewards tend to fit into kind of 4 different categories. You can have, give away a product or service, an experience or an event, a sponsorship or membership. For those we saw with the music venue down in Brighton, you can have these £1,000 sponsorships on there, which we're bringing in larger donors. And you can have straight thank yous, but I personally like thank yous that have a bit of personality to them, like this one.
Yeah.
So this is a great way of thanking the crowd. This is a vegan restaurant in Worcester that's set up using crowdfunding. They only exist because of crowdfunding. And they raised £5,000 for 127 supporters. For an organisation like this, it's actually amazing because they're basically proving they've got a customer base before they've opened the door.
Yeah.
So their chances of success as an enterprise is so much greater. Yeah. And they did this beautiful wall of gratitude, which is on the wall in there. It's a fairly small cafe. When you walk in, you can see this really dominantly. You have a look through their social media, you'll see this used a lot. It's got the names of every single backer on there. And I really like that. I think there's very few projects that can't do something like this.
Yeah.
Whether it's physical or on the wall there.
Yeah.
If you see somebody like Positive News, the magazine, they put the names of all their backers on the back of the first issue. So I'm on there. There's 1,400 other people, font size 6 on the back of a bit of A4. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. But it gives people real pride in what they're doing. And for customers that back this project, they're walking every time and see this on the wall.
And my local church has done it with, they built a new community centre and they put your name on a brick.
Yeah.
Literally Sharpied a name on a brick on the inside. It's fantastic.
It's a lovely way of forever. Yeah. So again, anyone like a museum or somewhere, this is a fantastic way of getting people to feel like they've actually really contributed. Yeah. Again, this is normally the domain of big donors. Yeah. We've named the wing after you.
Yeah.
Well, we've put your name on the wall because you collectively gave £1 million towards this wing. Yeah. It's not just about one person.
So Adri's just saying that he did a crowdfund for the Merston Mix, which I know about. It's a local cafe that uses leftover food and turns it into a great product. Has created a really great central community hub, places for people to come. They teach good eating, good meal making for families, all of those kind of things. And they used both rewards, events as a reward, but also as a thank you, which is really nice. So actually using both. Yeah, love that.
That's
Thanks, Adri.
You can have a product or service like, so these guys actually published a book. I know there's a few charities we're speaking to about who maybe going down a similar line of either books or videos, DVDs, that kind of stuff. Actually create something tangible which is in line with your mission of what you want to do. Yeah, I think it's great if you can create something that actually people want and need, but it's actually really close to what you do as an organisation. It's on point. So like we said about getting people into the museum, this could be something that's actually related to, maybe it's a photo album of the museum, all the things that are there. It's those kind of things that will help bring people in and bring them closer to the organisation. And there's a great example as well of how you add value to rewards. So this is a book which it was the money from this was going towards a dog home charity, and this lady released the book. I actually bought this book for my son, and we got one at home. I didn't buy the £250 one. I bought the £10 one, but it's £250 one was a signed book, and you got the your dog actually in the book. So the illustrator would actually take your dog and put it into the book. So there's spaces for 2 dogs to be illustrated into the book. So when that dog's in the dog's home, the other dogs are there, and your dog could be there as well. I thought it was a great way of up value a reward that yes, I'm getting the book, but actually it's about my dog being in this book. So that works well with those kind of signed things, as we saw in the Rag and Bone Man one earlier as well. Yeah. So a little bit on videos. It's quite interesting. The length of the video has been getting shorter and shorter and shorter, I'd say, over the last 5-6 years. So we say no longer than 3 minutes. This slide says no longer than 2 minutes. I think it's really important you just grab people's attention as much as possible in the videos and keep them engaged throughout it. We see videos now that are kind of more like 60 seconds to 90 seconds, but it's really about telling your story at quite a high level, getting your message across, and get as many faces in the video as possible. I think videos where they've only got one person in them or no people in them, which you see a lot, if it's got no people in it, I find it hard to really trust it as a project. I want to see people, I want to see faces.
That's really good advice.
And I think also if I see multiple faces in there talking about this from different angles, then again, it helps me really understand that this is a wider community thing rather than just one person's pipe dream.
And does that have to be a professionally shot, edited video, or because I've seen a lot of the ones I've seen on crowdfunding are actually just done with a cell phone, a smartphone?
Yeah, I think sometimes they can be really homemade, and actually that's part of the joy of it. Sometimes you do see these nice slick videos and get it across and whatever else, but actually, especially for smaller organizations, I don't really want you spending your money on a slick video. If you've got a volunteer that's going to do it, then great, and make it slick. But actually, you can do it on your iPhone and some home editing software just as good a lot of times.
Great.
And in terms of adding your project, adding your project is really easy. I had one yesterday for somebody. It took me about 5 minutes just to go through the process. It's really straightforward. You can get live pretty quickly, but what I would say is it's about the planning and the prep. You can start adding a project, and none of it goes live until you press the big go live button. So what I would advise anyone looking to do this, start now, start adding it, start seeing what needs to be added for your project. And therefore you get an idea of what you need to gather. You can then go live in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is. We had one project the other day that's been in this kind of temporary mode for 5 years and then went live. I think that's the longest we've seen. 5 years preparing for their project and it then went live. So, I think that is an extreme. The average is about 2 weeks for a successful project. The average for a failing project is about 30 minutes. So basically those people who start their project and go live same day are pretty much guaranteed to fail. So they've not thought about it, they've not prepped it, they've not put enough energy into it. So I think that shows you kind of the value of doing that preparation. There are 2 different types of crowdfunding. We've got all or nothing or flexible funding. So all or nothing is I must hit my target, otherwise I will not collect any of the money, it will get refunded back. So that's used a lot sometimes where it's like we definitely need a certain amount of money to do something, so we're going to buy the local pub, we need 200 grand by next week, otherwise it's not going to happen. Flexible funding allows you to keep whatever you raise throughout that process. You can decide that at the beginning which one of those you wish to be.
But you're saying that the all or nothing ones raise a bit more money?
They do. It puts more pressure on the backers. It makes it very clear that that this must happen. But the one thing I would say, especially for smaller teams working on this, if there's an individual kind of behind a small charity, it puts a lot more pressure on you as an individual. So I've definitely seen firsthand the pressure an all or nothing campaign can put on you. So that's something I'll usually assess with somebody at the beginning of the project to say, how'd you go flexible funding? Because I don't want to put that kind of pressure on you to say, actually, I have to get the 20,000, otherwise I'm going to lose 15,000. That can be a life-changing sum to a small charity.
I suppose it depends on the project as well. If you don't get the money, you can't do the project. So if it's a particular type of project, and if this is your only strategy for getting that money in, then that's one thing. If you've got multi-strategy, or actually the project's going to go ahead, we just want to supplement it with some funding, it makes a choice for you, I suppose.
Totally. And that also plays into this one, which is about what's my target. That's often one of the questions that comes back is, how much can I raise? And how much can I raise is a hard question to answer beforehand. We look at kind of what is the size of your existing audience, what's the compellingness of this idea, what's the potential to reach a larger audience, and choose a target which you think is achievable. I think when people go to back a project, they'll look at the target and make their decision quite often on the target and go, well, you're a small charity, you want to raise £1 million, you're not going to do it. My contribution makes no difference here. So therefore I'm not going to do it. Whereas if you're a small charity, I want to raise £10,000, it's like, well, I put 50 quid in. I think that actually makes a difference here, and I can see how that helps you towards your target. So I'd say keep your target as low as possible. because you can always stretch it. So this slide really talks about kind of stretch targets. You can always, once you've hit target, you can set a new target and say, yeah, we raised 10, that's going to allow us to do X. But if we raise 15, that will allow us to do Y.
Yeah.
So you can keep going and keep pushing it. So if you hit your initial target very quickly, then you go. So people like Led by Donkeys hit their target in a matter of hours. I think they hit about 50 grand in about 3 hours. And then we're able to go, right, okay, well, that's great. But if we stretch, we'll be able to do a lot more with that. And it was quite clear what they could spend the money on.
Yeah. So
that's kind of one half of the battle. How do you set up your page? How do you do that? I advise you to look at lots of examples of how other people have done it. Successful projects on average look at 16 other projects before they go live. So that shows you that kind of looking at those other examples really helps to kind of use to sculpt your project, see what people have done before. When it comes to promoting your project, there's some things to remember. I'll say the first one is we're now up to 65% mobile device. So quite often when you're creating your project, you're looking on desktop because you're writing stuff and you're bringing in images, whatever else. Your natural home is to do that on the laptop. Most people you're asking to donate will be doing this on a mobile phone. So it's really important to keep thinking about this on a mobile phone and previewing it on your mobile phone so you can see how that will work. And the right-hand side of this picture is they're probably doing that. Yeah. They're probably walking around, so they'll be getting on and off the bus, they'll be getting in and out of the car, they'll be trying to put the kids to bed whilst looking on their phone. So sometimes it takes a few times for somebody to see this before they're actually pledged. So what I hear a lot of is like, well, we've sent this out to everyone, but we've only had 10 people pledge. Yeah. It's like, actually, often they need to see the same message 5 or 6 different times through 5 or 6 different mediums before they'll actually go, oh yeah, now's the time when I'm going to do this.
Is there a more successful medium than others?
So the kind of cascading way down, I say, is kind of face-to-face asks, outstrips anything else.
Number one.
So face-to-face ask, get on the phone, ask, those kind of things, especially when you first launch the project. Yeah. And even beforehand, we'd say, look, line these people up to pledge on it.
Okay. You don't want
you don't want money there. You don't want anybody seeing it on £0. Okay. Is the rule of thumb. So you launch a project, don't want to see anyone seeing it on 0. Make sure you've got at least 10 backers putting, 50 quid, 100 quid, 500 quid on it, whatever, just so it's got some momentum. Yeah. There's another part to that question. What's the other part of your question there?
Just what are the best mediums for promoting? So number one was face-to-face.
So face-to-face. Email is great. So if you do not have an email list, I'd say start collecting an email list now. A GDPR opted in email list. It's probably the most valuable thing you can hold. So we've seen people like More United, who raised about £250,000 on their first crowdfunding campaign, having an opted in list of about 20,000-30,000 people that said, I want to opt in and I want to hear about when you're crowdfunding. Okay. So they knew there was going to be some crowdfunding before they'd opted into the list. I think that really helps as much as possible. And then you're onto kind of social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Yeah. Then onto press and whatever else. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute.
Okay. Just before you move on, just to you guys, if there's any questions around that, particularly around email campaigns, love to hear from you as to what you might be thinking about, whether that could swap out a different type of campaign that you do, whether you would trial it in any way. Would love some questions or comments around that.
And so this slide really talks about kind of the journey that a project goes on. This is the top left one there is the stats of the project, how many people are visiting this project. You'll see this a lot, is there'll be a lot of visits as I launch this. Yeah. If you've done a good job in your prep beforehand, when you launch it, you'll get loads of people to it. It becomes increasingly harder sometimes to get more people to it. So you see these blips, these bumps as they kind of do your email campaign out or do social media posts, etc., etc. And you get towards the end, and then there's the urgency of, oh, we've got to raise another £5,000 in the next few days, and there's usually a spike at the end as well. Yeah. As people, seen it for the 5th time and finally gone, oh yeah, I have been meaning to do that. I'm going to now finally do that because I have to do that. So part of the trick is be able to kind of talk about the project in different ways through different channels over a 28-day period. Yeah. Keep that story moving. What I like to do a lot of at the moment is writing that story before we launch. Okay. So this is the marketing plan. We're going to write this story that actually on day 9 we're going to have these extra rewards from Rag and Bone Man, which are going to drop in. And that's going to give us another spike. Yeah. Day 10 we're going to be in the local paper. That's going to give us another spike. On day 15 we know Jamie Oliver's going to tweet it out. That's going to give us another spike. It's building in those story elements before you've even started. so you can kind of relax in those dips and know that you've got another spike coming.
Something's coming.
So it's, it's part of the planning. On the bottom bit, you can see how many people have pledged on those days. What you will see if you study that is actually some days didn't have particularly big traffic spikes, but they'd had big monetary spikes.
Okay.
So sometimes you can actually get you can actually get a lot of people converting and giving more on days when there aren't so many eyeballs to it. Especially if we've seen projects where they get a lot of national press, might have a massive spike in traffic, but not necessarily a corresponding spike in giving through that. So that happens a fair bit. And on the top right there, there's a sort of stats you'll get from Crowdfunder. It kind of shows where your pledges are coming from. This is really important to analyze when your project's live, that actually what pledges are coming from email, what are coming from Facebook, what are coming from Twitter.
Oh, I see.
So you can go, great, email's working really well. Let's keep doing that, and there's plan to send that out 2 or 3 times throughout the campaign. Twitter and Facebook not working so well. Let's change the messaging. Let's do something different. Let's shake it up. A lot of times, especially with the Twitter and Facebook thing, yes, it's about your own activity, but it's also about the activity of those that are pledging and sharing. So that peer-to-peer activity is really important as you come in. So you want something that a project that's very shareable will see lots of Facebook and Twitter pledging, mainly from me pledging on it, sharing it with my friends, then going, oh, I also agree with this. This also affects me. I'm going to back this project. That's what you want to kind of really stimulate through having a very shareable project.
The ones I really like as well is the update button, and you can drop another video in it. So whilst you've got your campaign video, you can have another one where the chief executive of your charity comes on and says, hey, thanks, we're up to 40%, we're loving this, fantastic. Another little push, and then you can have a beneficiary video, and then someone in the team saying something, or something a bit more generic that just kind of gives some background. I really like this because there's a story that engages you, and both your supporters that have already backed you can do it, and they can come back in again, which we see a lot of. And then also it goes to new donors, which is great.
That's a great way of doing it. So in terms of those supporters, a lot of people say to me, who is going to back my project? How do I even start to look at this problem? This is a supporter canvas which I created, and I use a lot with projects, which basically breaks it down into 4 challenges. We look at kind of your own data, what have you got already? Your own social media, what have you got already? What partners can you leverage for this? Who else is going to spread the word for me? And then the unknowns. What am I aiming for? If this is going to go absolutely galactic? What does that take, and who can I get involved in that? So looking at your own data, I'd definitely try and line up some larger donors beforehand. So a lot of the times with charity projects specifically, the go or no go decision is based upon a large donor. So we go, look, we want to raise £40,000. I want to make sure I've got 20 of it lined up before we go live, because that's actually going to give us the boost of momentum and story that kind of goes with this. And maybe we can put that in as a match that says, actually, every time we hit 5, we're going to drop another 5. Every time we hit 5, we're going to drop another 5. So that's an important factor. Like I said, your own email data is really important. The larger you can get your email list, the more active and engaged that email list is, the easier it will be to crowdfund. If you haven't done a fundraising ask before, then it's worth warming them up to a crowdfund as well, and say, look, we're going to be crowdfunding, we're going to be launching for this. We're looking for ideas for rewards. We're looking for contributions for rewards. Here's an early view of our video. What do you think? That works across email and across social media. But get your potential donors kind of involved in the project and know it's coming. Your team is really important to this. The people actually working for the charity, their own personal communication networks. If you want to get up to 10, 20 people supporting this project, there's usually 10 or 20 people sitting in the office that should be backing this. I'd often look at a project and go, if the team aren't willing to even put in £5 each, then why should I put in some money? I want to see that. I want to see that kind of support from the people. The trustees. If trustees aren't putting into this project, then why should I be backing it? Once you've done that and growing that data, so a lot of times we'll look at this canvas maybe 6 months before launch and go, actually, we need to grow the email list from 200 to 1,000. We need to get the team engaged over this time period so that we're ready for launch.
Increase our social media following.
Coming on to the social media stuff, Facebook is usually the largest driver of pledges for a project. So it can be anywhere from kind of 25% up to 50, 60%, depending on the project. And a lot of that, like I said earlier, is peer-to-peer. It's not necessarily the charity putting it out on its own social media. It can be, but it's often people picking it up themselves and sharing it with their friends. Similar with Twitter. And depending on the type of organization, LinkedIn can actually be quite a powerful tool as well.
I used that. It was good.
So especially in those professional networks for looking at things like the CEO or the founders own LinkedIn and being able to push it out through there. So quite often the company or charity's LinkedIn isn't great for pushing stuff out, but the individuals within the team putting it out on their own LinkedIn can
trustees, ambassadors,
and especially if you've got a more corporate ask in there, what you'll hope to find sometimes is somebody who goes, I love what you're doing. I can put in 50 quid, or actually my business can put in £1,000, and get them to move from from a personal donation to a corporate sponsorship is a lovely way of doing it. What crowdfunding does, which maybe other routes of fundraising don't do so well, is really start to leverage your partners. So start to look at kind of what national or local partners that you've got that have got a vested interest in this project succeeding that can spread this word around. So if you've got a crowdfunding project which is for a museum and it's about engaging with local kids, then can the local schools help? Can the local PTAs help? Those types of organisations, youth clubs, anything like that that's kind of about got the same audience that you've got and would like to see this succeed. Can you leverage those relationships you've got already to make this project bigger?
I really want to emphasize this. I think this is one of the most important parts. The process of sitting down with all of those different groups and mapping your crowd, really understanding who your crowd is, and also in terms of who's going to give, but then also who can become an ambassador, a salesperson, a representative of the story you're going to tell about your cause, about your charity. It's really useful, not just for Crowdfunder. So many charities don't do this and say, who are they? I don't mean just looking at a database, but actually then mapping it out, drawing it, saying who do we know and who do they know is such a useful tool. Got a great question from Adria. Thanks, Adria, again. What's the average conversion rate of people that come and visit your campaign that then actually pledge? So once you've done this map and then you invite them to your thing, what's the conversion rate?
It's a really good question. So average conversion rate is about 5%. It's about 1 in 20 people will convert. It can be by project though, it does shift radically. So something like say the Led by Donkeys campaign is more like 20%.
Wow.
So you can see some really high conversion rates. A lot of that depends on how warmed up for it they are beforehand and how easy it is to understand and digest when they get to it, and also I suppose a sense of urgency within a campaign. But we have seen some fairly high conversion rates on some fairly big projects. It's one of those things that you can monitor throughout a project as well. So we'd often look at that kind of 3 or 4 days in and go, what is the conversion rate? Oh, you're only running at 1%. Something's not working here. At that point, you can change the text, you can change the video, you can add or change rewards. You can change a lot of the messaging at that point around kind of, let's have a bit of a rethink here. Let's get some feedback as well from people who've looked at it and say, what do you think? And quite often you'll get some common messages in there that say, I didn't really understand.
Don't really get it.
Didn't really get it, that bit. I don't know why you need the money. Didn't I give you some money for this already? How's this different from what you're doing? Etc. And then I always like to look at number 4 is the unknowns. What we're going to get from this. What do we hope to get from this that we haven't?
Growing your crowd, new people.
New people. There's always something magical and unknown that happens during a crowdfunding campaign. So every person I've ever spoken to who's crowdfunded will always have a story about something that says, someone came in and gave us £10,000 and I've never met them before. Those sort of stories are lovely. And sometimes it's like, actually, we got a new trustee from this. We were crowdfunding for a new premises. Someone gave us a premises. When you get those stories, it's absolutely fantastic. A lot of times, the ask hasn't really been put out there before, and this is the first time that ask is being put out there. And some magical things come back off the other side of it. So it's always nice to think about what other things we'd love to get from this that may happen.
That reminded me of a question we got offline earlier. What's the data capture like within Crowdfunder? So if you suddenly get a load of new supporters as a charity that haven't given before, they're not the people you've emailed out, but it grows, it gets shared, and other people give. What's the data capture like for a charity? So
crowdfunding is a great way of kind of using your existing donors to maybe find new donors. You're bringing in new people the whole time, which is what we try and do. And when they go through the process of supporting you, they'll basically get 3 questions pinged at them. They'll say, do you want updates from this project, this specific ask moving forward? So we're going to renovate the town hall. Do you want to receive messages about us renovating the town hall? Yes, tick. The second one they get asked is, do you want to hear about from this organisation generally about anything moving forward? So yes, I opt into what the charity are going to send me anything about any type of communication. then the third one they get asked is, do you want to hear from crowdfunder about other things that may be applicable for you? At the end of the project, you can download that data. You become the data controller at that point. I've got a massive, beautiful GDPR document that tells you all about it if anyone wants it. But you effectively become the data controller at that point. You can import chunks of that data into your systems, depending on the various opt-ins, and decide how you're going to use that data under your own GDPR rules internally.
Great.
So it's a great way of kind of building that database. So a lot of times people will see a database grow quite significantly over a crowdfund, and they'll see their Facebook likes and Twitter followers grow quite significantly over a crowdfund as well. So it's a great way of just kind of especially for launching a new charity or initiative. It's a great way of doing it.
I know a lot of the charity guys that are online now will be really interested in that, because growing your crowd digitally, growing your supporter base digitally is right on point for a lot of charities at the minute.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. Like when I was speaking to Butterfly Conservation, they said, that crowdfunding has become one of their kind of core digital streams. It's part of how they reach out to new people and bring them in and grow that. And it's a nice way of doing it that's different, especially with the reward element. It's different than maybe some of their core funding asks.
So great question here coming from Sean. A lot of the successful campaigns I've seen have been very local and very specific in what they wanted to do, which we've talked about. But for something that's national, more general in how the money would be spent, what advice would you have? The charity he's from, roundups.org, is brand new and leaning towards other fundraising routes, and then potentially looking at crowdfunding to scale off the back of that. What would your advice be?
Yes, I think especially there's a few things in there. So I'd say national works fine as long as you've got a very identifiable audience. So it's like, who is my audience for backing this, and really doing that thinking about who are my potential donors for this, and being able to kind of narrow it down slightly. If it's too general and too national, it's applicable to everybody and nobody all at the same time. So I think it's worth trying to think, who is this actually aimed at? And starting to build that crowd before you crowdfund. So focusing in on that and go, look, we're going to launch this in 6 months' time. By that point, I want to have 5,000 people who believe in my mission about what I'm doing, who are signed up to this and are likely to contribute. And trying to figure out, with a project like this, is that the end consumers that are likely to back this? Is this actually the charities that may benefit from this that are likely to support this? Is it both? And how do I start to build an audience in both of those pots? Over that time period, but try and make it specific. It runs the risk of being quite general. How do you make it very specific and therefore more applicable to that end?
And I was thinking of it as two communities. You've got the very local and regional community. So I live in Reigate. I reach out. I want to do something in Reigate that affects Reigate, so I ask Reigate to support it. But then there's something more specific. I know we've got someone from St John's on, who won't mind me saying, the running community or the cycling community absolutely depend on St John's being there to care for them if something happens, whether it's something minor like needing Vaseline for sore legs or something, or whether it's something more serious. And so that's a national community that St John's could go to, as opposed to something very local and bespoke, right? Because it's about a different community group that you can find online that you can't find through other sources.
Very true.
Let us know if that answers the question, Sean.
And so just going on to the marketing generally, what we often see is projects will set up a marketing plan before they go live. I've developed this marketing checklist, which I'm happy to share with anyone. If anyone wants to email me at phil@crowdfunder.co.uk, happy to share this with you, and you can use it as a template to start your idea, start your plan, and start to piece it together. The sort of things this will cover within the document, you'll see things like, yes, you need to build a team, have clear roles about who's doing what, and make sure everybody's engaged with this. I hate it. I've had this a few times working with charities where someone comes in, they're really enthusiastic about it, and then they go, and this is going to be run by Bob. And Bob walks in and goes, what's this all about then? And we're going live tomorrow. They're probably engaged with it from the start, is that the whole team are involved in this, and they're all going to be pushing it forward. Check the project with your team and crowdfund before you can like I said, you can create that project, you can preview that project, get loads of eyeballs on it from different people, different target audiences. Make sure it's just not yourselves internally. Get a wide demographic of people looking at it. Watch the video, watch the text. Would they give? How much would they give? Have those conversations beforehand, so you can iron out all of those problems beforehand. Warm-up emails work really well. Set the date you're going to go live. there's nothing more empowering than saying we are going live on the 1st of July. Everything needs to happen before this date. Oh, that's a Sunday. Okay, we're going live on 3rd of July. I'd say best days for going live are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd go the crowdfunding day generally goes between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. That's when peak pledges happen. So launching on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday around about 10 o'clock is normally when you want to do it. But have those pledges lined up before you go live. Have those, that's the next bit. Have some large donations set up before launch. Really helps kind of move things along. Have a launch event.
Can I just quickly talk about that? We've talked about that, having large donations set up. So that feels like a charity needs to go and secure those and say, hi, we're going to crowdfund, and on the 3rd of July, we're going to go. Would you mind putting some money in? I've got some experience with helping a charity called Frederick's Foundation do a crowdfund. And what we did there, just to kind of de-stress it a bit, is money that we knew was coming in already, that was pledged already, but towards the Frederick Foundation, but not necessarily towards the crowdfunding appeal we were doing. We said to them, can we use this to help match what the crowd give? So every time someone gave £10, we dropped in £10 from the donor that had already pledged, rather a large amount. So we kind of knew already we had half of it, but what we really did was doubled the amount we were going to raise, as opposed to setting a crazy total, and that worked really well. So it could be that some of the charities that are listening have already got money that they know is coming in and are thinking, how can we leverage it? How can we double it? And this is a great way to do it, right? I think
that's a fantastic way of doing it, and I think also with people that maybe haven't been asked before, it's a great way of constructing that ask. So maybe especially for smaller charities, newer charities who aren't used to asking those questions, it's a great way to kind of say, look, we're going to do this. This really help. If you could contribute anything, let me know. And I've seen that a few times when the contribution that comes in is significantly larger than they expected. Sometimes smaller, but often significantly larger, which is a lovely way of doing it.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Phil. I'm taking up your time.
That's all right. So having a launch event is a great way of doing it. It's a great way of galvanizing the team behind this, as well as maybe the trustees, maybe some existing donors and new donors. We're going to go live. We're going to launch. Going to get everyone in the room. Nobody's leaving this room unless they've all pledged. You can do it on your mobile phone. You can do it on that laptop over there in the corner. Get them giving their money there and then.
I'm going to make a note not to go to Phil's house for dinner.
You never get out without pledging. Give everyone something to share on Facebook and ask them directly to share. So especially with the team, especially with the trustees, etc., and large donors, is make it so easy for them they cannot say no. Give them something specific. Don't just expect them to magically do it. Line up partners to share on specific dates and chase them. So if you know somebody is going to share it and think that's quite important to your project, say, look, what day are you going to do this? I've got another planner that I'm using at the moment, which is like a day-by-day planner. It says, this is a 28-day campaign, and on day 15, so-and-so is sharing this project in their own Facebook group. When they don't do it, you're then able to chase them up and go, sorry, you said you're going to do that thing. Can you now do it? And it's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. But here it is now. And have a key action for each day. It really helps to have that action for each day. What's going to happen? What's going to drive pledging? And even if you wake up one morning and go, look, this isn't the thing I'm going to do today for X, Y, and Z, at least you can swap it around with something else, and you've got an idea. The worst thing is to go, launch this project. I've got 25% funded. We're a week in, and I've totally run out of ideas. It's nice to have all those ideas up front and just keep picking from them and trying and testing and putting them down. If you do run out of ideas, we always have more. So contact us about that. And I'd say this is key slide in the whole deck, which is start from the middle and work your way outwards. When you launch your campaign, the people who are going to pledge on it first are the people that are closest to this cause. They may have given before, they may work with you, they may work with you. Get that money on the board first and show that momentum. Do not show anyone from outside the organisation a project on £0. It's just the kiss of death to any project. It just makes you work a lot harder.
But I think it's fundraising 101, isn't it? The two most important words are proximity and affinity. Proximity of relationship to you as the cause, and affinity to your cause. So go ask them first. And then work your way out. Who's the next group? Who's the next group? And by the last people you want to bring in are people who don't know about you as an organisation, never heard about you before. To see everybody else has got involved in this, and there's 1,000 people who back this idea. It must be real. And now I'm going to get involved with it, and that brings them in. I'm not going to be the first person to pledge in that situation. We've got a range of partners on Crowdfunder that have match funding available. It's always worth having a look through that. You can go to crowdfunder.co.uk/funds.
You'll see all the live funds that we've got available there. We've always got new funds coming online.
Yeah.
A lot of local authorities giving out money to projects as well. It's worth having a look to see what we've got for you.
I'm just going to dive in on it. So this is a bit of a soapbox of mine. Even this morning, I was contacted by someone that had written a grant application to a trust and foundation, spent weeks and weeks on it. It didn't get funded. Huge waste of time, huge waste of money, both for the writer and the grant giver who had to read it, and then ruin their brand almost by saying no to the individual. Increasingly at Crowdfunder, we're building a team that are going out to go and ask high net worth philanthropists, trusts and foundations, local authorities, other charities and grant givers to place their money on Crowdfunder as a match. And then when you place as a charity your ask, your crowdfund, the project that you want funding to come on, you will see that these brands start popping up saying, hey, we might have some money for you. We really like these projects, and that might be stimulated by geography, by theme, by the target audience, by the beneficiary. And you can access that as a new way. You don't have to write a separate application for funding. It just comes up out of the application that you've made as you're building your crowdfund. You might have to add one or two more details, but that's it. And then the great news for the funder, the match funding, is that they know that your project is wanted. Why? Because the crowd's verified it. The crowd's put their money where their mouth is. So they know this is a project that the wider crowd wants. So the brands that you see up here suddenly have their brand promoted to a wider crowd, and they can come in and fund projects that really matter to communities. So I'm really enthusiastic about this, and I think genuinely think it's the future of fundraising in the grant making space. I think this has so many legs, and that's why we're building a big team around it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you'll see it from local authorities, traditional funds, foundations, and also corporate partners getting involved with that. In terms of other stuff available to you, so there's huge amounts of stuff on Crowdfunder. There's download. If you like reading, there's loads of downloadable PDFs. If you like engaging on social media, we have a crowdfunding accelerator which runs every month. And if you like watching video, there are a huge array of online videos available. A lot of them are interviews with projects that have done this already. It's really good. It's one thing to hear from me. It's even better to hear from projects that have been there and done it and their own experiences of how they, especially how they balance the day-to-day of running an organization along with crowdfunding as well at the same time. So that's it. It's been absolute pleasure speaking to you guys. I think we're going to see if we've got a couple of questions now coming in. I think we've done most of them as we've gone through. I think we've just covered how we access match funding. I think we've covered all of the questions that have come in, he says, frantically looking through. I think that's it. Has anyone else got another question they want to ask? Feel free to pop it on the screen. Otherwise, we're going to say thank you and goodbye in a minute. Yeah, well, thank you very much. If anybody wants any of those documents that I showed there, please just email me at phil@crowdfunder.co.uk. Yeah, I'll send that over. And if any of you want to speak about potentially crowdfunding, then get in contact. Yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Thank you very much. All the best. Bye. Bye-bye.